the company that I run and the work that we do effectively kind of deals with a range of early stage companies at any given point in time. For example, I think at this point in time, we're working with 19 early stage companies, anywhere from, actually, I think 2 of them are right now still at the idea stage, whereas the kind of the most later staged ones would probably be, 6, 7 years old and have gone through Series B investment. And basically the way we work with them is this sort of co-creation mode where we deliver a bit of strategy, a bunch of methodology, training and coaching to the founders and their teams. And then additionally, on top of that, for some of them, but not for all, we also provide basically product development capacity, particularly the ones that were kind of funded or founded by business heavy founders. So we typically work not with technical founders, but with founders that come from business segment and are going into this entrepreneurship. The reason why I'm saying that is because, in a way, our analysis, our take on the crisis has been, I guess, viewed from the optics of working with this sort of range of companies. And they would come from different industries and different stages. But in a way, we have all gone through kind of a similar set of stages as we were trying to figure out in what way this crisis is actually going to affect our business, and what are the necessary activities that we have to do in order to survive or hopefully thrive throughout this crisis. Also, just for transparency's sake, I'm not sure sort of what situation is. I would like to hear from some of you, at least, to see how the crisis has touched you. But d.labs itself has not been immune to to the onset of COVID. I think in the first 2 months we have probably been hit with at least 30% of revenue drop almost instantly. And that went actually almost like across the board of our clients. And what we were trying to do is we're trying to figure out how to both help our clients, but also help ourselves in a way to turn this curve into a different direction, right? I think that there was a lot of confusion at the beginning around what is the nature of this particular kind of dynamic or business dynamic, ecosystemic dynamic that COVID has caused. We've seen that through speculations of what is this curve going to look like. And I think you remember at the beginning of the crisis, we talked about, is this going to be a V-shaped curve, or is this going to be a U-shaped curve, right? Yeah. Or, it's going to be an L-shaped curve, which means it's just going to go down and then stay down. And I guess the reason why we were all kind of so obsessed with this shape of the curve is because we were all trying to understand, and I think we were sort of mimicking what the big companies were thinking at the time, but we were all trying to understand what is our next baseline here. So what is the level of business that we have to adapt to? Because the scenario that you pick, right, from any one of those curves effectively tells you how do you have to change your company in order to survive. In more cruel senses, it tells you how many people you have to let go. It tells you how much money still you are able to invest into your marketing, into your growth, into your product development. And I guess this is where we've seen a lot of companies, actually, luckily enough, not in our portfolio, but quite close by, making some quite significant, to a degree, rookie mistakes with going through the crisis. I think what helped us initially was that this was not the first crisis that d.labs has gone through as a company. We've had the 2008, 2009, which was just actually when we were in sort of when we started. We had the 2013, 14, which was the credit crunch sort of in our part of the world. So this was by far not our first rodeo, so to speak. And so in a way, we had a bit of a playbook almost in play when we did that, and that playbook, I think, saved us quite well. First of all, I think that the thing which we all realized is that despite so no matter how the curve is going to be shaped, probably the best thing to do once you have sort of a massive event of uncertainty is to cut a bit deeper than you think it's necessary to cut at the beginning, which is probably rule number one, and super difficult to do. Super difficult to do because, you know, we're all operating in a space where talent is extremely scarce, where everybody, you know, when we're trying to recruit, you know, great engineering talent, everybody's like fighting for each and every one of them, you know, on a month per month basis. And yet keeping the talent just because of that notion without realizing that what kills the company is not the depth with which you cut your sort of your losses at a time, but it is a potentially continuous fall towards the bottom. I think once crisis emerges, and when we're in that sort of inspection in a certain stage, people expect strong decisions, and they expect strong decisions because everybody knows that you would rather make them sooner than try to do them later. So this is something that we've done. We've said, all right, look, you know, it's a difficult thing. And actually our clients did the same thing. Our client did exactly the same, which by the way, also caused, you know, additional sort of cascade effect, but we understood that this whole supply chain needs to be right-sized for this level of uncertainty. And so this is the first thing I think that we've done and really helped us out. The second thing that we needed to take a look at, and that's always, you know, the probably again sort of a general playbook scenario, is to take a look at your cash flow. And your cash flow, by the way, being measured with a singular metric, which is how many days of zero revenues you can survive before you go bankrupt, or before you cannot, you know, you're not sort of able to pay out your obligations. This is probably the second metric that every entrepreneur needs to figure out. And we've done this exercise, and we've done this exercise also with every single one of our clients. We wanted basically extreme transparency across the board, because we also understood that that if there's going to be sort of some sort of a support effect that we would want to provide to our clients, you know, this kind of transparency and trust is crucial. Which brings me to point number 3. Your whole value chain at that point in time, so when the crisis emerged, you know, essentially operates on trust. And so the sooner and the more openly you share your situation and start to prepare for scenarios, not just within your company, but also within your suppliers and with your clients, you know, the sooner you can start to structure combined or joint strategies with which you will want to go through this particular crisis. So lesson number 3 in this crisis is interdependency that you have across the value chain. And these are all still, you know, very kind of quick, rapid response mechanisms that you need to do before you even start to think about anything strategic and then, you know, like long-term resilience and relevance and adaptation to crisis and stuff like that. And I think what we've realized, at least across our portfolio of founders that we were working with, is that, you know, in contrast to many other people who are working with corporates, we were extremely lucky to have worked with what is the most, by nature, the most resilient portion of society, which is entrepreneurs. Because by day 5, we've already started to figure out, okay, how is this an opportunity for us, right? And despite the fact, you know, we've cut our losses, we've made sure we have a bit of cash on hand, We've designed basic strategies of how we're going to deal with, with banks, with loans, with everything else that sort of surrounds the whole value chain. And then immediately we jumped into, all right, let's see how we can, how can we take advantage of this. So one of the most sort of beautiful things I think that came out of this thing is really to realize the strength, the resourcefulness, and the mental resilience, I guess, that the entrepreneurs have. Because I think for many of us, this crisis was almost nothing more but a slightly worse Tuesday in a way, right? So because the way we operate already kind of accepts a certain level of uncertainty, whether it be because of the investors, innovation, or whatever we're doing. So this was just another sort of level of that. That being said, we did when we were starting to figure out, or we were starting to understand how this thing can be an opportunity, we did start to speculate a little bit about which portions of the changed behavior we're going to see in society because of this crisis are going to stick around, and which portions, which parts of the changes we're seeing today, connected with the lockdowns and everything else, and industries going up and down, is just going to be a blip sort of on the history chart. And that was, I have to say, that was, first of all, it was a lot of fun kind of speculating, obviously in a sort of grotesque way, but still it was, I think, one of the most relaxed and interesting activities that we've done. And trying to understand things like, will people travel less? Will they travel more? Will this sort of work from home thing become like the new norm, or is it going to get back? What's going to happen with remote meetings and workshops and a bunch of things that now we're just suddenly start to develop, all this skill set. And I think this is super important, more from the standpoint of trying to imagine different types of futures, as more than trying to know exactly which one of these is or are going to take place. But we've seen a few adaptations, I guess, coming out of these sort of the thought process that worked quite well across the board of our clients. And I think I'm just going to mention two, and then I'm going to shut up for a bit because I have a tendency to over talk anyway. But two of these adaptations essentially were the following, which is that every company needs to start creating a super local way of doing business. And I don't just mean way of doing business together with your employees. I'm saying we need to start getting ready for the tendency that all of a sudden our markets are going to be temporarily closed. And I think despite what's going to happen in this sort of big context of, COVID, and whether, for example, is this vaccine going to come through? Is this the last winter that, we're going to be seeing these outsized effects? There is high likelihood that localized outbursts are going to be continuing to fly across the board for quite some time. And those localized outbursts will disrupt in one way or the other the movement of atoms across the globe, whatever these atoms represent, whether they are cells, cargo, supply chains, or travel, or your customers. Figure out a local version of a service you're doing that might potentially create just a bit of extra demand that's going to take you through kind of a slump at that particular point in time. And the second thing, if you can, obviously, is whatever you're working with atoms, try to see if you can do the same thing with bits. So in whatever way you can digitize your services. In whatever way you can digitize any sort of atom to atom interaction, is inevitably going to help your business become more resilient. I guess just something to get us going, if that's all right, and we might want to hear a bit from the audience about that.
Thank you, Jaka. I see Barty is also taking some notes for us on the Barber board, and I've been writing down some things because I feel like the lessons that you have structured for us are really practical, and we can very easily apply some of them. I was thinking for myself, like back in April, as you said, it was kind of okay for people to stay calm and to observe the reality and to wait a bit to see what will happen and then go act, while today we are already at the stage where we need to have we need to have a strategy going forward, and unfortunately or fortunately this strategy involves us taking bolder moves, as you said, cut a little deeper than expected, which is most of the times very difficult, right? And I think many of the founders who are participating would agree that yeah, with their companies they have had to consider letting people go, or they have had to choose where to cut from their budgets, which is obvious. But then yeah, we have actually representatives here from different industries. I see for example, Paulo is here, Paulo Vela, who has an innovation for health. We have Priscilla, who has sustainable fishery trade innovation. We have Leopoldo with an agri-tech business again, and Bill is here, and his business is within the mining industry. And I was thinking maybe just to aid our conversation further, if some of the LEAF fellows, maybe the ones I nicely announced, or some others would like to share some of their current challenges or concrete exact case studies which with you we can discuss forward, because I feel like we all have some very exact problems, and it will be interesting and useful to talk about them now within this group of peers, and to hear advice from you and from each other. So yeah, I was wondering if some of the fellows would like to share any challenge.
Well, hi
Hi,
everyone.
Paolo.
Hi, hi. How are you?
Very good, and glad to have you around again.
Well, as a start, I think the idea that I had when I participated at Leaders Innovation Fellowships was a system to monitor the feeding behavior of babies. But when COVID came up, I have to put that idea on standby, and I started to develop a new product or that is based on COVID. And so I have some troubles. At first, I have to let go, as Jaka said, some members of the team, because at the beginning we were 4 in the team. There was one who was in charge of the marketing stuff and all that things. So now we are 3, just the people who work on the development of new technology. So we are now an electronic engineer, a mechatronics engineer, and a doctor. Now we are working, thanks to the Royal Academy, we secure a grant for the pandemic preparedness. So now we are developing a COVID monitoring system for COVID patients, also, but it's at home. What we are trying to do is a way to monitoring vital signs of these patients, in order to reduce the contagion that comes from the doctors when they're when they are close to these patients. And we're also trying to reduce the collapse of the health systems when they cannot afford this increase of infections. Well, it is difficult to work. Communication is difficult. We have to do all remotely. We don't have the access to the laboratory at the university. So we are working in our own workshop at home. We have create a new space at home where we develop the electronic parts. So it's been a new adventure. So we're going but it's been many challenges come with this COVID pandemic. But we're happy because we are developing a new solution that we hope will stand if a situation similar to this one comes on the way. We are very enthusiastic, and we hope that this new product that is called ResPIoT is maybe could go well. Well, I know all of you, and maybe in the future I can put that product on Europe or on another market. That's what we hope.
Okay. Can I comment there just a bit? Thanks, Paolo, by the way. That was really, really cool.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
thank you, Paul.
So I think from what you're saying, and you're right. So you did. I think the steps that you've done also by letting go, figuring out whether you want to pivot or not, is exactly, I think, the right thought process that is needed. I think really in uncertainties like this. I guess the thing which you have to be super cautious of is the question of this question of pivoting towards solving specifically COVID related problems or pain points. And the reason why I'm saying that is because to a degree you don't want to be a toilet paper seller. And what I'm saying by being a toilet paper seller is that if you remember, at least that's how it looked like in the UK, is that at the beginning of the crisis, the first month, there was no toilet paper anywhere, right? So there was this outsized reflex of a market that just wanted to spend money on stocking up. And for whatever psychological British reasons, they focused not on flour, but they focused on toilet paper. And the reason why I say I want to be cautious about it is because some demands related to COVID might have a bounce effect. And so as much as I think it's good that you're building up your relevance by trying to think of solutions that will be kind of pandemic related, right? I would be cautious to focus specifically purely on COVID. I mean, I understood that your solution is wider. It can go wider than that, right?
Yeah.
So that's good, because never underestimate the ability of people to instantly forget the crisis once it's over.
I've talked about that with the team. That I've always tried to do this, like how we can develop the product as with a business model in the future that could make it sustainable and scalable, not only for COVID, because there are many chronic diseases that also need remote monitoring. So we are also pointing to that way, because there are other parameters that could be useful, like glucose levels, or maybe arterial pressure that could help for other diseases. But what I'm trying to say is that I know that only COVID is not the best focus right now, because the pandemic is kind of softening. It's kind of we are all kind of getting accustomed to it. I know is the word, but it's becoming part of our lives. So a product only focus on that is not really useful.
No, I agree, but I think you did. I think you did exactly the right step, because you were able to obtain a grant in order to achieve building on your product, which basically increased your resilience right over time. And so I guess when you're formulating strategies right now of how can you efficiently invest that money into your product development, the idea here is, I think it's all right to say, hey, my first kind of product coming out of this research will be COVID related because that was grant related, but there is a vision that goes sort of wider than COVID behind that. And as long as you can kind of at least technologically able to articulate what the steps towards achieving that vision are, you are going to be in a good position to fundraise on the back, obviously, of successful research that you're doing within that particular context, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Jaka.
Sure.
And also, thank you, Pau, for bringing the topic of pivoting. I think this was something I initially also wanted to bring on the table as a discussion topic, because I believe we all know how it is very important to, to pivot when the idea is not the right one, or where we discovered that with the resources or with the team we have, we could do better doing perceiving another project or service. But then within the current situation, Jaka, and with the experience you have with the companies around you, what is a good mechanism for us to decide when it is the right time for pivot, or how could we potentially pivot in a time when we need to do that, but still keep our, for example, alternative option open? Is that something, or how do you see it from your experience? Do you think we should take the chance, similarly to Pau, and go into perceiving this new service or product, or do something else?
I think that's an awesome question. Bear with me a bit. Let me paste something, if I'll be able to do that. Let me try and paste something in the Miro board. By the way, is Miro or Miro? Why am I talking Miro the whole time and everybody else seems to be talking that it's Miro board?
We've had this internal discussion with the team, and it's never ending. So I guess just everyone calls it as they prefer.
Okay. Bart, is there any chance that you might give me editor rights?
Yeah, you're not on the thing yet.
I am, but I have view only rights, and I want to paste something that people can see while I'm discussing this exactly.
You should be able to, if you click on the blue button somewhere to request your rights. I'll give you, I can approve it directly.
Bear with me. Request editor rights. There.
Yeah.
Nice. The risks of the live streaming and the challenges of the digital reality we live in.
There you go.
Dude, Miro has been the best thing that happened since sliced bread. Seriously.
Yeah. You should have access now.
Yep, brilliant. Now let me just see if this also allows me to put in stuff. God, I'm overcomplicating this, ain't I? Sorry, bear with me.
Now you're just making us more excited about what you have to share. So
no,
it's working. It's working.
Simple. Oh, there we go. All right. Guys, are you seeing this? So go to the left of the board or click on my icon and you'll see what I'm seeing, right?
Okay. The engineers here are already excited. There's a graph.
Yeah, there we go. No, dude, yeah, saved by the quadrants. That's always, the best way for consultants to talk for hours around nothing. No, but honestly, so when we were thinking about, the framework to use around, what are the responses, or how do we think about responses to COVID? There was this sort of notion that we've developed in this, by the way, super cute community called Exponential View. And if you don't subscribe to that newsletter yet, I would super suggest you subscribe to it. It's probably one of the sort of finest deep tech newsletters that exists around there. And the founder of that newsletter was also my first client in London, which is the reason why I know him. But anyway, at the beginning of this crisis, we had precisely a discussion around how do we think now about these responses. And basically we've, think at the back of a napkin paper, developed this, this framework that includes relevance and resilience. And so if we discussed what resilience is in the sense of, how much cash you have at hand before you need to close down, really, we also need to understand the question or the context of relevance. And I guess relevance is most easily explained by saying, or by asking yourself, in what way does your product matter to your customers today? And if you see that your relevance because of COVID is waning, right? For example, if your business was revolving around the fact that you needed to put a bunch of people in the room and do an event, right? Or, you wanted to move a bunch of people around the world or something similar, your relevance might be in a bit of a stretch. And so, depending on how you judge your relevance and resilience to be at this point in time, this is how you base your responses upon. And then, if you have high relevance but low resilience, basically, right, that literally means that you might have something that could potentially pull the market through, but cut your losses, go into it full, fight to survive, go full tardigrade if need be in terms of your costs, but persevere and continue. Whereas on the other side, on the other extreme, diagonal extreme of the quadrant, so if you have high resilience, which means you have a lot that you can sort of afford to do, but very low relevance, this is where you want to pivot, right? This is the reality of pivoting, because this is while pivot is still possible. If you have neither, so if you have no relevance or low relevance and low resilience, I mean, we can talk about pivots all we want, but the way you're going to fund that pivot is by going to be your own sweat and time and energy and money. Now, if you can afford that, that's great. Most people would not be able to, especially in these types of crisis. So, probably trying to make a graceful exit, is the way to go. And obviously, if you have a product or a service that's highly resilient and highly relevant, this is where you double down and you aggressively attack the market, right? And then there's all the combination of these things. And I'll give you an example, right? One of our clients in London was facing a situation which seemed to be low relevance and high resilience. They were building a laundry service. So laundry on demand, kind of when people pick up your dirty laundry in a bag and they take it somewhere and they wash it for you and they bring it back and stuff like that. Yeah. Which, given that everybody goes back home, all of a sudden people have a lot more time, everybody's home taking care of their families, it doesn't sound as appealing, because price-wise, especially if you have a dishwasher at home, washing machine at home, that doesn't strike as something that could be, massively relevant at this day and age, right?
Okay.
And to a degree, that assumption was true. There was a drop in revenues. We had to figure out, find ways to find niches. We noticed a few interesting things, by the way, like, for example, that actually the biggest new potential customer niche is people with broken washing machines, because not only would they not, typically go out, they also wouldn't accept washing machine repairment to your home at that point in time. So all of a sudden you're kind of, forced to use these types of things. But anyway, this is not the point. The point, on the other hand, was because they were a marketplace, because they were dealing with multiple laundry factories, the way they call them. So, they were being the intermediary between the client and laundry factories. Those laundry factories all of a sudden became a lot more depending on their particular, stream of customers, even though it was diminished. So all of a sudden, they were able to take this aggressive stance of, acquiring new partnerships that a year ago would not give them a light of day to even talk to them about it. And now, because all of a sudden everybody was in crisis, their relative sort of strength in the market became all of a sudden a lot more significant. And they were able to, based on that strategy alone, were able to raise funds, go in there, acquire exclusive partnerships, and now basically they were just waiting for the market to open and they're going to flood it. So you see, so there's different strategies which you can sort of figure your options out, and some strategies might not involve your clients, they might need to involve your suppliers.
Thank you for this one, and for the graph. I think I didn't expect such a such a strategically explained answer. Thank you for that. And in the meantime, I saw that Leopoldo is also on stage with us, and I imagine he has something related to a personal and business challenge to share. So I'm rushing to give him the word.
Hi.
Hi, Leopoldo. How are you?
I'm good. You? Thanks
Thanks
for everything that you mentioned there, Jaka. I think I did like that very simple, simplistic diagram of pivot. We didn't pivot, but we did go through some of the things that you mentioned. So One of the things you might or might not remember, but I was during our workshop, I was very personally against going to sell our products through distributors. That's something that I wanted to kind of break and be different and trying to go to direct to customers and these type of things. But in regards to that cut as possible as fast as you can, but then at the same time you have to sell is very difficult because you need people to be out there, especially in the agribusiness, which by the way is one of the businesses that has not received the hit of COVID very largely because people still has to eat. But there's still a lot of, I mean, other problems like everybody going on this type of strategies of keeping cash flows, which sometimes means not paying suppliers. And when I'm the supplier, then I'm in trouble. So that's that's kind of a thing that it's been a lot of problem. But then, yeah, so thinking on how we could still grow because the phase that we are entering as a business was trying to make some sales traction and then from there trying to bring some investment, but now with no incentive to spend more money on growing for getting sales out there, we felt like our only option was to make a deal with some distributors, use their sales force, and change the model a little bit. So we did change a model, still same idea, same products, same target market, but just the way we're doing it is different. Now that's what we've done. We've signed an agreement for a exclusive, but not for too long agreement with a distributor. So we're using their sales force, and what we had as our sales force became now more like product promoters or technical support type of people that goes with the salesman when requested to try to close a sale or a technical sale, which for the first 2 months, 2 or 3 months when we did it, it was very slow. I was kind of desperate because we were not seeing any results. But from last month, we started seeing like a lot more of purchase orders from this distributor, which I think it was just a period of convincing them or them getting convinced that it actually had a fit in the market, and I think now it's happened. So now we're starting to see purchase orders, and that's giving us some cash flow, which is good, so that we can know now how to plan for the year ahead. But I think we're going to keep it for at least another year this way. And I'm kind of liking now this new way we're working, where we can focus a lot more on developing people that can support maybe salesmen in distributors and things like that. So back to focusing more on the technical side, on training people and making that differentiator in a different way of being more looked at as a tech company. Because otherwise we will be hiring maybe salesmen that will just push the sale in a traditional way of just not very technical or anything like that. So kind of worked out for us, doing that mindset of, well, okay, we'll go with distributors even if we didn't want to. We're losing on the amount of margin that we're getting, but maybe for traction, which is what we wanted, is working out there.
I think I congratulate you. I really do. I think there's one point that you might have sort of intuitively also felt. When in doubt, and especially in crisis, always err on the side of action. So between sticking to what you know and kind of slowly being diminished, right, and actually doing something, even if it's wrong, even if it's going to prove to go the wrong way, action is always better, because action brings your team and your people together, and you start to be, instead of trying to have a passive stress of what's going to happen the next day, you start to take charge, back of your initiatives or anything like that. So the fact that you went with distributors, even though you didn't want to, I think that shows a massive sign of leadership. And honestly, when we were also thinking from d.labs standpoint, right, we were sort of doing, we went through the same mental process. And I think it always pays off to lead to the next direction, and to the change is significant, than to stay the way it is. So I think this was a super good move. And if you take something away from sort of this crisis, you know, I think you can be proud of the fact that you were able to make such a substantial change quickly, and, you know, take your team to the other side. I think another element to your story, which is something at least that you know, we've seen, or I've tried to instill in d.labs, and I'm kind of curious to understand how you're thinking about this. But we had a notion, right, actually coming from previous crisis, which is that kind of true, deep, meaningful business relationships are formed in crisis. And remember when I said at the beginning that the response to the crisis is not just your own, it's a response of the full value chain, so your clients and your suppliers and everything else. We had a situation where at least 3 of our clients at a given point in time were sort of facing massive money shortages. Some investment rounds were being delayed. For some of them, some initiations of the projects were being delayed. And we made a conscious decision basically to say, you know what, guys, for a certain amount of time, whatever happens afterwards, but for this amount of time, we're going to keep up the same level of service, whether you will be able to pay it in the future or not. If you're able to pay it, you're going to pay it. If not, that is our cutoff. That is our cutoff point. And it wasn't actually a small amount of money. But the whole point in making a statement like that really was to create a situation within which you maximize the chances for your customers to have a benefit from your products. And I think it was only at that point in time where they really sort of gotten attached to the fact that they're using us, in a sense that they probably would never want to lose us again. So it's a super exercise of loyalty when you're showing something, you know, something like that. So for example, in your particular context, what I'm thinking, and I'm kind of curious to get your feedback, but I would probably say that at least to a few of your direct to customer clients, right, are probably valuable because they are the ones that are always going to give you product feedback and service feedback, and you'll be able to learn from them and improve your service. And then that learning curve you'll be able to use to then sell your product to a mass market through your distributors, like you've said, right? And I think that balance, if you strike it well, can work really, really, really well for you.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks. That's some of the things of the reasons why we wanted to go direct, because we wanted to be able to learn from the customer, especially in this stage of the company. And then once you have someone in the middle, then that relationship is a little bit broken. But yeah, we did have that initial feedback from the customers, and we have some customers that we're very close to, and they are the ones who probably now struggle the most on terms of payment. And it becomes very that relationship, even though it's been very good, and we are still saying giving them support and going visiting their farms and everything. Every time you have to say you have to pay, you already owe me for 100 days. It's also an uncomfortable position and with the client, and you're a bit afraid of them not giving you the information, because we still need that information in order to improve our service. One advantage of working with a distributor is that the distributor becomes the bad guy, and we still go direct to the client. So we like the bad guy in the meaning of they have to charge them, not me. So they kind of separate who is supplying the service for technical support and feedback. So I'm still getting them through my technical support guy and promoter, but I'm not the face who is charging the money. So that's another advantage that I'm seeing on this distributor relationship. I mean, as long as my distributor pays me, that's okay. But yeah, I think it's working out in those two ways, and it's going to be very important for us not to or to keep to keep in the central point, or in very important point, having those guys that are still the contact between the client and the distributor, because they are the ones that will be gathering the information for us to use all that material and then go. For example, now we only have that distributor in the center of Mexico, which is one of the hotspots of agriculture in Mexico. But there's other 2 areas where I'm not at all. And is my aim next year to go there. So I need to have that information from that area which I'm working now, and then take it to the other one.
I understand. I think the advice that I would probably give you in terms of dealing with your existing direct clients, instead of, remember when I said that initially that the worst thing you can do to your own team is every 2 months you tell them, well, crap, we have to let someone more go, right? The same thing actually goes towards your clients, right? If every month you're saying, hey, your invoice has just gotten a bit higher than that, and you both know that they cannot pay, right? I mean, unless you're thinking that they're hiding something from you, but you're kind of dodging the reality of the situation. And I think this is where, it's better actually to have an outsized response and think very carefully, in terms of saying, okay, how long can I realistically support such a customer? And then actually making a statement saying, you know what, dude, look, you and I both know that for the next 5 months, you will not be able to afford me, right? Or, for 6 months. And then you start to have this conversation based on that. And you can decide whether you want to finance them, which I don't know, I'm not sure how expensive that is for you. I'm not sure what your variable costs are. But this is where the conversation starts to happen. Without the honesty and transparency on both sides, that conversation is meaningless, because then it starts to skew in your data flows, your feedback, and everything else, right? So I think it's better to look at the bull in the eye and say, hey, dude, okay, you're a bull, you're not a little sheep. Then think about what you're going to do with the bull, because it's a different game.
Yeah, no, it's totally right, because with transparency, as what you said at the beginning, as a third step, was the one that probably I wasn't, of all the 3 things that you say that play by the book, that last one is probably the one that I need to work more on. And is that maybe I can support 90 days of payment with them. And at the moment I have them at 30, but they're not paying, and they're already on 120. So I have to go and say, look, if you need 90 days, I'll give you 90 days, but be transparent with me. So we make sure that at 90 you pay, because otherwise I'm going to go down with you.
My advice, instead of trying to see this as a negotiation, talk to them about how their monetary cash flows are going to be looking like in the next 12 months. And then work with them together to see whether they're able to afford you, or what are they able to afford to you. Because basically you're acting like, sort of a bank or an investor in whatever way you're going to do it is, right? And then this is how you get, you go into their finances, by the way, which is also going to super help you figuring out your pricing structure and everything else for later, because you're probably going to get a ton of information about how they're seeing their business, right?
Yeah. Okay. No, thanks. Great advice.
Thank you, Jaka. And I think we all realize, and thank you, Leopoldo, for being so open about your current challenge and therefore helping us all learn. We all see that keeping our existing clients is now an even bigger of a deal than it was before, right? But I was wondering, what are your thoughts around reinventing how we reach new customers? I think you already mentioned how we go from atoms to bits, was it? How do we digitize? And I know that there aren't really, I don't know, 1 or 2 universal rules which we can use, but in the context of what Paulo and Leopoldo shared, and in the context of most of the attendees being researchers turned entrepreneurs, what do you think we should change in our approach to reaching our customers these days? And have you found some tricks there with d.labs?
There's no tricks when it comes to customers. There's never any tricks, and whoever tells you otherwise, they're full of shit. No, I don't think really there's tricks. What I do believe is I guess the following thing, which is that there are some industries which have a tougher time adapting to this sort of new digital way of communication, digital sales, digital workshops, and everything else, right? And I think that these particular industries are probably the biggest opportunities, as long as they're producing something that still makes sense or something that's still going to keep on being relevant, but they're just kind of old industries. You know, trying to figure out ways in which you can connect sort of, you know, our digital space into their analog way of you know, procuring or giving out businesses or whatever it is, trying to maybe educate them and train them in this way so that you don't, you know, so they don't feel stupid when you start to do, hey, dude, are we going to have a Zoom call? And, you know, I mean, that's probably not the case anymore, but let's say, you know, let's have a Miro workshop.
Or even that, yeah.
Right. You know, and they feel stupid. So this is where I think going the extra mile in being not only the seller of the product, but also the guide that's going to bring these people into the realm of this sort of remote work and everything else, I think plays significantly well. And it plays particularly significantly well because not a lot of people are going to be doing that. Because most of the people are just going to avoid these industries, you know, because being fully digital is cool and everybody, you know, is great on Zoom and yada, yada. We kind of perpetuate these myths about sales and how much more efficient it's going to be. But come on, guys, we work in a space where we don't address millions of customers. You know, our ball game is getting to 500, then, you know, 1,500, then maybe 5,000 if we're doing with SMEs. But most of the time, it's about capturing, you know, 5, 10, 50 whales that we're trying to get to. And what I'm still seeing, and I'm still seeing too little of, in a way, is this positive, this warm hunger, the friendly hunger to really take somebody's hand and say, hey, dude, not only do I have something for you, but I'm going to take you step by step in a way of me explaining why, and you're going to learn all the tools that you need to learn kind of on, you know, on the way. So I think this notion is probably, you know, is probably super important, because on the other side, what we're seeing is, as everybody's kind of, you know, jumps to these scalable, you know, prospecting tools and everything that we're, you know, we're all bombarded with LinkedIn messages, you know, going, hey, I've seen you haven't read my previous email, and hey, I've seen you haven't read the previous email of the previous email, and or this automated sort of tools are doing. Everybody's trying to automate and fix these things with scale of, you know, access to a bunch of customers, and they're thinking that this scale, because it's available right now, is somehow going to solve it, and that's just not the case. I think, you know, human interaction is actually getting even more important in times when, you know, we don't have a lot of it, and I guess being honestly empathic and helpful, you know, probably creates the most outside responses in sales we've seen, you know, we've seen up to date. So that's, you know, I know it sounds boring, but that's really the only rule in sales is just be more human, and that really works.
No, yeah, and I really take this from you about the interdependencies and about the fact that we don't work isolated in our, I don't know, in our small bubble, in our small industry. We are part of this value chain together with all the people that we collaborate with, and then if we help them, you know, excel in their digital, I don't know, skills, or help them learn something new, this would eventually bring us also closer to success. So I think from my point of view, this was a great advice, and I'm mindful that our three chairs on the stage are now free, and there are quite some people that haven't asked the questions yet, and I know some of the LEAP fellows here also have a B2C innovation. I think Lisette has one, so I'm wondering if anyone else has a certain challenge or a question to ask before we move on, as I also have quite some as well. By the way, you could be brave enough like Leopoldo and just put your name on the chair, or just unmute your mic and ask the question if you feel like. Or if not, I was I was also curious to hear more about your view on the crisis itself, Jaka, because you mentioned your playbook, your kind of book with lessons you've learned from previous crises. And I personally read all these news around will this crisis have a ripple effect, or will it just go away? And every day I try to figure this out for myself. But from your perspective, as someone being in the entrepreneurial world for many years, what should we expect?
Well, look, I guess, I think we need to ask ourselves, why are we asking ourselves that? Apart from general curiosity, obviously, and I guess betting the market or something. And I think the reason why we're asking ourselves, will this crisis have ripple effects, is because we want to know the answer to the following question, which is, which strategic modifications to our business we need to start thinking about today, because there's going to be lasting changes. So our assumption needs to be on the cautious side at the beginning. Basically, we need to assume that unless proven otherwise, everything's going to go back to normal. When I say to normal, I mean pre-COVID, right? And then we have to see and spot the differences, and then really, really scrutinize the evidence that tells us to the contrary. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you are, super well prepared for a crisis that doesn't exist anymore, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm saying this is because we're not governments, right? We don't have this kind of insurance sort of policy in place. I want Lisa to want you to ask some questions. Anyway, so one thing that is very likely that at least is going to cause some prolonged effect is the notion of working from home. This is probably the only thing that we're seeing that because it didn't just change our behavior, but companies changed their asset structures because of that. So they were starting to selling off offices. There's now policies in place which promote and prolong working from home for an extended periods of time. We probably should take that change, that at least parts of that change are probably going to stay with us. And that can create a few quite interesting consequences for us. That can create consequences such as dispersity of talent, which means that it might be easier for us to gain it, but also easier for us to lose it to, companies that will be all of a sudden learning how to do things remotely and recruiting across the board. It means that anything related to home, so every service or product that'll make our home living more bearable, is likely going to be more interesting down the line. It means still that a bunch of services that will create autonomy of working from home, whether it be in forms of schooling or exercise, of all the things, we tended to use external facilities for. Parts of that are still going to be kept in a way sort of within this new framework. But I think that everything else really, our B-day is going to be a thing because there's no toilet paper, probably not. Are people going to keep on making bread at home, because that was a thing for a bit of time. It's highly unlikely that these things are going to cause some, cascading and long-term effects. The work from home bit, some sort of blended or distributed sort of mode, I think that's very likely here to stay. A lot of evidence sort of points out to this thing.
Thank you for this, Jaka. And in the meantime, I see Joaquin also joined us on stage, and I believe he might have some additional question or challenge to share if you'd like to. Hi, Joaquin, welcome.
Hello to everybody. It's I'm very happy to be here. Thank you. Talking about what you, Jaka, just said, let me tell you a different story. In Mexico, we had been used to face several crises. Because of our political system, each 6 years, economy and politicians are reborn. So if one is leaving a crisis, then it restarts everything again 6 years later, or a month later if when the change comes. So for us, facing the crisis of COVID, of pandemic, puts a different style on the crisis, but every crisis has a different style itself. What we think is that things are never going to be the same after COVID. Business are changing. Yes, of course, there will be less home office work, but people have discovered the advantage of home office working and remote working. So maybe this will change the basic structure of business, and we must be aware of that. And the second point is that what we have done, and I'm asking you for all of your opinion, you are the experts. We have taken a lot of care about our cash flow, which was the first part of this conference, and then assuring cash flow even with very little profit. We are trying to focus to external markets, which has helped us to stay with good thing in our equipment, with new development, and we hope to keep this new development after the crisis, the COVID-19 crisis stops, so that it will found us stronger after the crisis rather than we were before. We have an award also from the Royal Academy. Thank you very much, Danny, and all from the Royal Academy. We are now pertaining to an international research group, and we're focusing our objects to find our innovations. What do they have to help with the crisis and with other sanitary crises? As a physicist, let me give you why I think that this pandemic crisis is not going to finish completely. It has changed the world overwide. If we think about global warming, and we think that all frozen soils on Siberia, on Canada, on Greenland, and many places are, let me say as this, getting free some bacteria and viruses that were frozen for millions of years, then we must think of this pandemic as a lesson, how to recover us from a pandemic. And this is a teaching place with only one viruses. Think about the unfrozen of these bacteria and virus, then we will have more than one at the same time. So that's why I personally believe that we must prepare ourselves to have a complete change on our business and life systems. Thank you to all of you.
Wow, it was a good talk.
That was great, Joaquin. Thanks for sharing. And I also would like to congratulate you on your approach to using the chat and this event for, reaching to potential partners. As I saw you message Leopoldo, and you guys will be in touch. I think what Jaka also mentioned earlier, it's important that we take use of all these digital resources we have at hand these days to grow and to explore opportunities. So I'm glad that we are making those connections even now throughout the chat. Are there also any other questions by Joaquin or by others who are joining? I saw that Lizette left a comment for us that with her B2C business, it wasn't going so well this year, and she's looking to make a new strategy in 2021. I don't know if it's worth for us mentioning anything around B2C and anything interesting that you think, Jaka, is worth considering going forward with our B2C products.
Well, I would probably need to know more about what they're trying to do. So if we have Lizette still with us, would be great to hear a bit more specifically what they're dealing with.
Yeah, Lizette, I don't know if you fixed your audio issue or not yet. I believe her product is portable bathrooms. And if I'm not mistaken, we also have, or used to have Giuseppe around, who also had a platform, food ordering platform, but I think he has recently dropped. So if they're not around, I guess we can.
Well, what I would be curious, because
move
actually,
forward.
well, while we're waiting for Lizette potentially to even write something down if she can, you know, the thing that I would be curious is actually to hear or to read from everybody, because, you know, Joaquin made the point before that, you know, he believes that the crisis that is, you know, upon us in a way should or will drastically change our behaviors and lifestyles and our values, because it's not the only crisis, and we have the climate warning and everything else. I'm kind of curious how you guys are seeing this thing. Do you think that there's going to be lasting changes to the way we we conduct our lives, or our, you know, consumption, or our business development, or sort of other things? Super curious to hear, because we come from, you know, all over the world, I guess, a little bit, and it's interesting to get different viewpoints. Anybody dares to go first? Entrepreneurs.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Awesome.
We
Hey,
can,
Adrian.
we can.
Right. I mean,
How,
my
Adrian?
microphone is a bit noisy, but what I found in this COVID is that I normally assess patients and athletes through a physiotherapist. And normally what happened with this lockdown is that nobody wanted to go to the physiotherapist or to the medical doctor or to the or to the medical center. So what happened is that patients started contacting me directly from the UK, from US, and obviously from Mexico, where I'm from. So what I found is that now, even if COVID, uh, I mean, if they find a vaccine or a cure for that, I still feel that the good thing about this is that now I have clients in other countries that I would have not had originally. And that's why I
great.
think that remotely still works for me. Even if COVID goes back, if I do a good service, probably I could be recommended by other persons. But what I'm afraid now is that if everything goes to normal, and it has done, then I can compete against people that are already giving access, not remotely, directly. So now I'm trying to contact the physiotherapist directly, but some of them still don't have enough income to pay my software. So that's where I'm still struggling of finding my target. So I don't know, it has been like my target has been changing from business to client. Now it has to change suddenly to business, and I still haven't had the opportunity of finding how to do to make this how do you say, to have enough money to get expanded. And so I'm working on that.
So can you just tell me, Adrian, in a sort of little way, sort of slightly more detail? So what does your product actually do? Is this like remote physiotherapy, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, what I'm doing is remote assessment. So for example, normally when we have back pain or shoulder pain,
Yeah.
what I do is I place some sensors and I evaluate which part of the spine is generating the problem. So in that case, I normally, what I did was having a lab in Mexico or in the UK, people came, they did their test, I gave them their evaluation, and then they went to their medical doctor. But now what I did is I got associated with a physiotherapist. So I make them get connected online. They do some tests. They're not that accurate. And then we give them a treatment. We tell them, okay, now you have to do flexibility this way, stretching, and we're working together, and we're trying to sell the whole service. So that's why things got modified, because people couldn't go more in the UK. They couldn't go to the physiotherapist, so they contact me directly. I don't know if that was clear enough, but that's how things happen.
No, I think it was, and I think it's a beautiful case of how you change, you know, from atoms to bits in a way. when you have a service, right? So changing from a position in which you needed to have your product and the customer in the same space, and instead you're all of a sudden able to generate customers across the board. What makes you think that people will not continue to use your service after the lockdown, for example, is over?
Yeah, what has happened in my case in the US, well, my biggest clients are in the US and in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
is that they normally get cured. I mean, they stop having pain, and then if they don't recommend me to someone, then this service stops. This means I attended 3 people in the UK. They felt better, they were happy, and they never and it did, this word didn't spread. In the USA, I had other 5 clients, and only one has keep paying because but he's a physiotherapist, and he keeps
Yeah,
bringing
yeah,
people, and I keep evaluating them. So business to business has worked, and was like a good investment in the way that he's still bringing money in dollars, which is quite good in Mexico. But the people that I attended, like business to customer, they were happy, but I had the money, but it didn't keep growing. So that's why I'm in that stage of how to get to more people, or more to physiotherapists, because if you convince one physiotherapist, he could get to all his patients. While if you get to a client, at the most would recommend you with only one more person. So that's where I have been feeling a
yeah,
bit
yeah.
blocked.
I guess it's a similar challenge to what Leopoldo was talking about before. So either going directly and figuring out each customer at the time, or using multipliers such as distributors for the same thing. And I think that there's no reason for to be not to try doing both of these kind of strategies, as long as as long as there's skill set in you and in your team to figure both of those out, right? What I would probably advise you though is the following thing, which is that I'm quite sure that some benefits, and especially when it comes to price and when it comes to convenience of using services such as yours remotely, so through Zoom, me not needing to actually move my butt and go out and go to a physiotherapist and come back home, probably carry a certain level of attraction for the customers, which is point number one. Point number two is that um, particularly in physiotherapy, it's very rare, as far as I understand the situation, that a pain or the cause of the pain would go away for a longer amount of time. So it does require a certain kind of continuation, as infrequent as it is, in order to sort of keep the same level. And I think what trying to provide these services remotely allows you to do is it allows you to service many of these customers in a sort of quite infrequent way for a small portion of whatever monthly or annual subscription or something like that, and kind of give them a peace of mind, right? That they have somebody that's going to continue show them either make the diagnostics, or bring in new exercises, or say, well, this is great, but you have to work on this. There's a bunch of things, I think, which allows you to prolong your the lifetime value of the customer. What I think your challenge really is to figure out how you market to customers, because that's very different to how you market to a business, right? And I think for that, I think the best way for you to pull it off is to try and find somebody, maybe even within the Lyft network, that can do a bit of coaching on doing B2C advertising in this particular context, right? Um, because as I said, I think there's a lot of things you can do when you launch such a service on scale. I think there's also a lot of pricing advantages that you can bring to the market as you're entering with like physiotherapists from anywhere in the world to serve customers anywhere in the world. There's a bunch of these things I think that you might be sort of interested in trying out, as long as you have somebody that shows you how. So potentially, I don't know, maybe you talk to Danny or to like people around. Maybe there's some connections to be had where you would get some direct hands-on advice on how you want to try out some direct advertising and marketing for the B2C part of the service.
Yeah. Thank you really much.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for sharing, and also, of course, Jaka for giving his advice on this one. And being mindful of time, and I see we are approaching the end of today. I wanted to ask Bart if possible to move the Mara a bit towards the notes section, where he was so nice to take down some of the important moments we shared, and I will try to wrap up by just picking the ones which struck me most. I think it was great that Jaka pointed that we shouldn't assume that things will get back to normal. We should rather plan and act in the current reality, and sometimes we need to do this rougher than we would like to. We also may want to think about the fact that the work from home is here to stay and maybe the new reality, and how this affects us and our partners, suppliers. Also, what are the things that we had to do? He already mentioned three actions in the beginning of the call, and how to think about our revenue, our strategies. And I hope that all of you also took something useful from what we shared, and from the real business cases which were shared, both from the Lee Fellows and also from Jaka experience. And I don't know, Jaka, what are your also final thoughts, having heard all these challenges, all those questions the entrepreneurs from around the world have?
I love the Live community. I love the I think kind of the honesty, but also the realness with which they're explaining your stories. I think the way Leopoldo explained sort of his scenario, and Adriana and everything. I think this is why we like to do these types of things and these types of events and connect people. And I always, I think, end up from this sort of from this get-togethers with more energy than I started off from. So I actually want to thank everybody here for making this a lot more pleasurable conversation than otherwise. And particularly, I think this was my third public speaking today. So the fact that I'm still kind of is hats off to you guys. So thanks.
Oh, thank you a lot, Jaka. And I know that you would appreciate some feedback, and our team is always kind of reminding everyone about the little feedback forms we have at the end of each event, which really help us to to do this thing better and better for all of you. So in the chat, I just shared the link to the short feedback form, and everyone who's around, please take a moment to fill in. And I know that not all of our questions could be answered, and I really thank Jaka that he he shared his personal point of view and expectations, and I'm sure this would be very useful for all of us going forward. And until then, I hope that we can stay in touch and support each other. I know that it's different times, difficult times for all of us, and we should, as a community, support each other, and we are here for you anytime.
Well, thank
you again for participating, and ping us if we can be of further help to you. And see you soon.